screen and you guys and looking at what I'm doing. So we're looking for about 2 cups.
Oh, for anyone who hates chopping onions because it makes your eyes hurt, chew gum while you're doing it. It keeps your eyes from watering and it doesn't bother you as much.
I confess that my very first cooking job, I had to, this was almost 40 years ago, we had to make French onion soup every day. So one of my jobs was chopping, about 50 pounds of onions on a daily basis. And I think after that, I've been forever cured of crying from onions. And it rarely does it for me. The other thing that really helps is a very sharp knife. Sometimes the kitchen crew at Eden Village will put on goggles when they're doing a lot of it to prevent it. It looks pretty silly. It seems to work. All right. So we've got a couple cups of onions here. Just going to put it in here for the moment. Oops. So that was basically just one large onion, diced up. All right. And then we're going to do 1 clove of garlic. Or actually, we'll do 2. Why not? And we'll just peel that quickly. Or maybe not quite so quickly.
Is it okay for us just to watch but not actually to make it?
Absolutely.
If we don't have the stuff? Yeah.
No, just watch it and enjoy it. And then, you can do it later. And this way, at least.
I find it interesting to learn how to do it.
Good. That's important. So that's all good. And, our brains are pretty good at retaining information. So, when you start doing it, you'll kind of go, oh, yeah, I remember that. At least I do anyway. So, all right. So the way I like to chop garlic, I take the easy way out. And I do have a cleaver do half the work for me. And this is where it's going to get a touch like that. Smash it. And then I just go back with my knife and give it a quick chop, but it's basically done. I don't like garlic presses because I hate cleaning them. All right. So I've got a pot here. I'm going to start cooking. And I chose a big pot because there's going to be a lot of spinach and it'll be a lot easier to cook it in there rather than doing a shallow pan. All right, so put a little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon or so. And we're just going to put that in. And start sauteing that. While that's cooking, I'm just going to wash a little bit more spinach. Spinach the other day, but it's always good to wash it. Even though it was pre-washed, I never trust them entirely.
So we have the onions and the garlic in the pan?
Well, right now it's just the onions. I'll start sauteing those for a few minutes. Okay. Then I'll put the garlic in just a couple moments. Fry that up. And usually when I put in the onions, that's when I add a little bit of salt and pepper. I can do that right away. So a little bit, not too much because the feta cheese is cold. So you want to take that into account in terms of putting salt in. It also depends on how salty your feta cheese is. Some are more salty than others, so that will definitely change it. All right. In the meantime, we've got the spinach. So right now what I have is I have about 2 pounds of spinach. I have a bowl here and another one right over here. All right, let's see. Trying to see if I can see everybody. I can't see anybody here. There we go. Now I can see everybody. Hello.
All right, we got
That's
got
a little better.
question of, do we chop the spinach?
No, you won't have to chop this. Let me amend that. If the leaves are really large, yeah, I would give it a quick chop. Honestly, I bought baby spinach, so in this case, it doesn't really require chopping. It'll wilt down so much, and even with larger leaf spinach, you don't have to. When I use Swiss chard, though, because sometimes I'll use spinach, sometimes chard, sometimes a blend. In that case, I will chop the chard because the leaves are just way too big. And that way, when you go to eat it, you're not trying to get these nice long leaves and eventually start going. All right. So we have more spinach here. We have a lot of spinach. We'll be adding that in batches because it's the only way. If you try putting it in all at once, there's no way it'll fit. But it wilts down very quickly. So I have it on high right now. This is the part that's really hard because it's just going to take its time. And if I rush this, then my dinner won't be any good. Since we're making this, I'm eating this too.
All right, welcome to folks who just joined. To recap, we have chopped our onion, started sauteing that. We chopped up some garlic, and I think we put that in there too.
Yep, not
washed the
garlic,
spinach.
not in there yet, but shortly. Sorry. While that's going on, since I got to do something, I have about a pound of feta cheese here, which I'm just breaking up with a fork. Okay, and just that way, while it's cooking, since I just have to stand here and wait, might as well do something. So unfortunately, cooking sometimes is a lot of just standing there and waiting for something to fry, cook, bake, whatever. So there's always the wait time in addition to. All right. So you want your onions to get kind of wilted. Translucent is usually how it's said. So it's almost there. And in a moment, I put the garlic in, fry that for another minute, and then we'll start adding the spinach in. All right. How's everybody's summer?
Seeing some thumbs up.
Right. So at this point, I put in the garlic. Give that another moment. I'm not turning on my hood, so my place is going to smell like onions and garlic rather strongly. Luckily, we like that. So, but if I turn it on, I'm afraid you guys won't hear me over the hood. So. At this point, you should really start to smell that garlic coming through. Stir it up. And in just a moment, I'll start adding in the spinach batch by batch, and we'll cook it down. All right.
So how many people do we have cooking along with us today? Okay, I'm seeing a couple. I'm seeing lots of kitchens here. This is awesome. We're all going to have Spanikopita for dinner.
I am now adding in some of the spinach, and I'm going to start letting it cook down. I find at this point, it's often easier to use a pair of tongs to just toss the spinach in. And just as it wilts, you can add more spinach and just keep adding it in as it wilts down. At the end of this, we're going to end up having to drain it really well because phyllo dough doesn't like a lot of moisture. And we're also going to want to cool it a little bit so that when we add the cheese, it doesn't just melt in with the spinach right away. So I'm adding more spinach in as we go. As it cooks down, another handful goes in. Just keep churning it. And it should cook down fairly quickly. So I'm doing this all on high heat, by the way. Okay, adding, stirring, and tossing till it all cooks down. It's amazing how greens in general can cook way down. There's no way it'll fit, and yet it always does. So, yeah. All right. Yeah, that didn't work. Opening up some ricotta cheese while I'm waiting for the spinach to cook down a little bit. And then I'll just keep adding in more and more.
We're actually doing Tom, we just made some ricotta at camp here, and we're gonna be teaching that as one of our DIY videos this week.
Great. Well, we're actually doing it next week again because we're going to do it for the pasta dish that we're doing, and then at the same time that we do the make ricotta, we're also going to make paneer. Both of those are basically about the same technique, just a little different.
Awesome.
One thing that will be helpful for that is
So
getting
I guess
cheesecloth for people for next week. So anybody who's going to be there may want to get that as well. And I noticed on the Eden Village site, it's recommended getting a gallon of milk both for the ricotta and the paneer, but you can use less. You can make it with less too if you want. Obviously, your yield will be smaller, but it depends on how many people you're really feeding. So, all right. So I'm adding in the last of the spinach at this point. And the bowl that I have here, I'm going to use that again once I mix it, the spinach with the feta cheese and the ricotta. So just setting that aside for the moment. And we're going to set up a colander to put this all into. Let it drain properly. So we have a colander here. I hope you guys can see me because I can't always look at how it looks over there. So almost cooked down. I'm going to use a metal spoon once I have it in the colander to just press out the liquid because it's really hot.
Wait, what are we doing with the colander? We took the spinach out?
We're going to, as soon as the spinach completely wilts, we're going to pour the spinach into the colander and then let the spinach drain, and also encourage it to drain a little bit by pressing on it with a wood spoon to try and get out as much of the moisture as possible. If you put wet stuff into Spanikopita, it just gets very soggy and it won't get that nice crispness that most people like from the Spanikopita. So.
And is the cheese in there yet?
No cheese in there, not until it cools down. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys, hopefully you can see. So this is what all that spinach cooked down to. I had a bowl of spinach that was full here, plus some, so it would have been this much, and it cooks down to that little, which is rather remarkable, always. All right, so I'm putting it into a colander. It's in the sink. Make sure you get everything out of the pot, all that onions and garlic, that's where your flavor is. So, that. All right. So I'm going to press out the liquid.
Chef Tom, where's the liquid come from?
It's this. Well, spinach is made from mostly, like most vegetables. Most vegetables have more water than pretty much anything else. So it's all that water that's cooking out, and it's just so we cooked out a lot of that water. We're trying to get rid of some of the excess. Now we're going to let it cool a little. So I just spread it out into the colander. So let's see if I can bring it over so you guys can see how that's hot. Anyway, so this is what it looks like. I just spread it out. I'm pressing it with a wood spoon right over the pot so it can just drain into the pot. While that's draining, I'm going to put this aside. We have to let that cool for a little bit, okay? So we're just going to set it aside because if you try to put it really hot stuff into the phyllo dough, it won't work. Besides, you don't want to burn your hands. So we're going to set that aside. In the meantime, I have some butter here. Now, if you don't want to use butter, you can always use margarine. The other option is a little cooking spray. And this is for the phyllo dough when we start assembling it all. But it's going to be a few minutes before we get to that. We'll need to melt some butter. Also, let me say that if anybody is vegan, you can certainly do this with crumbled tofu instead of the feta cheese and ricotta. I would probably add a little extra salt to make up the difference. And then also you can use a margarine or oil for the phyllo dough instead of butter. So,
how much butter are we melting?
Well, now this is where it gets a little difficult for me to say precisely. I'm starting off with 1 stick of butter, and I'm melting it really, really low, and that will be brushed. I've got a brush here, and we're going to use it to brush between the layers of phyllo dough. Okay. But we'll get back to that in a few minutes. In the meantime, while this is cooling, we can start doing the the Greek salad that we're going to be doing.
Can I just ask a question real quick?
Please.
Since I came in a little bit late, did you just add, did you add the garlic and the onion? Is that what you sauteed the spinach down in?
Yes. So I start off with the onion, let that wilt a little. Then I add the garlic in about 3-4 minutes into it. Fry that for about a minute. Then start adding in the spinach.
Got it. I just want to make sure that was a one pot thing there. Now we're good. We're good. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions?
Is it all right if the phyllo dough is frozen or has been in the freezer?
That's going to be a problem. Okay. It has to be completely defrosted. So what I might recommend in that case is set up everything. If you make the spinach mixture today, set it for tomorrow, you'll easily be able to use it for the phyllo dough the next day. But if you try, and I have, and it doesn't work, I've tried in desperate circumstances to use partially defrosted phyllo dough. You don't want to do that. It's just going to be a big mess. You're much better off, make the filling, put it in the fridge. Tomorrow, when your phyllo dough is defrosted, assemble it then. So just watch what I do, and then you can go from there. But that would be my recommendation, honestly, because trying to work with frozen phyllo dough is not fun. Been there, done that. I won't do it again.
So
We added the dill.
Oh, I'm going to add the dill in when I add the feta cheese and the ricotta. So I'll just put that in. It'll still have that nice fresh dill aroma at that point. Okay. So
And what are you doing right now, Chef Tom?
I'm slowly starting the cucumber salad. So I'm just partially peeling the cucumber. Depending on the cucumber you get, if you have a nice, organic farm cucumber, you may or may not want to peel it all. It really depends on how bitter the skin is, and that varies cucumber to cucumber. In this case, I'm doing a partial peeling. You can see that. So I get some of it off, but I leave some color there too. All right. I just trim off the ends. I have a little compost bucket on the side. And then I'm just going to slice about 1/4 inch thick slices. An average cucumber, that means about 4 slices. And the nice part about a Greek salad is the truth of it is people dice it all sorts of different ways. Some people like a really small dice. Some people like a large dice. Whatever works for you is really what it is, okay? And however much energy you have to want to do it. The smaller the dice, the more work it's going to be. So sometimes just chopping it large is very easy and quick. So I've now sliced this, and now we were just going to chop as we do this. Whenever I do dinner preparation, particularly at home, a little less so at the camp because we're dealing with different volumes, and I have people who work with me. I try and set things up and do things so that I'm always busy. So since this needs to cool, while that's cooling, I'm making the Greek salad. All right. And that way you just, by the time it's all done, dinner's pretty well set up. What I will say is we're going to take this, we're going to set up the Spanikopita. And then I figure you guys can bake it whenever you want to for whatever time you guys are going to be eating. Because once it's assembled, it will wait no problem for a bit. You don't want to leave it too long, but for the moment, it's fine. So I'm just cutting out the core of the tomato here. That's it. Getting rid of that. I'm going to dice some red pepper here. Again, if anybody's got any questions, please feel free. I feel silly sometimes just talking.
So how many people were we expected to feed? I was trying to look for it.
So the Spanikopita, the pan of Spanikopita, depending on how hungry people are, could feed about 8, roughly 6 with good appetites. The salad, so the salad that I'm making, the recipe in the book is for about 8 people. So it's quite a bit of salad. Seeing as how it's only my wife and I'm making a much smaller amount, so I'm really only doing a quarter of the amount that's written up in the cookbook, because otherwise I'll have way too much Greek salad for the entire week, and that won't be good, because I can eat, but not that much. So slicing, it's a great way to know whether your knife is sharp. If you can cut through a ripe tomato, you know your knife is sharp. And if it's not, find a serrated knife. That'll work really well. Okay. And so we're just chopping this up. Now, when I make Spanikopita at summer camp, which actually has been a while, we start off with those large garbage cans of greens worth, several of them, in order to make enough for about 300 people. Because by the time you cook it down, it cooks down so much. All right, so we have tomato, we've got cucumber. A little bit of red onion. Okay. And we're only going to do about a half of a half, so about a quarter of an onion. Cut it small. Okay, put this aside for now. And like any salad, you know, if you like more red onion, add more. If you like less, add less. Make it to your taste, not anybody else's. You're the ones eating it. Okay, so that's what's important. You should like it. All right. Check the spinach out, toss it a little bit, see if we can cool it off a little faster. This is the tricky part about working a class like this. So sometimes if things don't, they work on their own time, not necessarily the timing that you want them to do. So we have some olives here. I'm going to slice a few Kalamata olives to put into the salad as well. Again, whatever amount suits you. If you like olives, great, put more in. If you don't like olives, you can leave them out as well. So there's no set rules for things in general.
Are you putting all these items together, or are you cutting them and keeping?
Right now, I'm dicing everything and just putting it into one bowl here.
Okay.
So right now, I've got the cucumbers, the tomato, the red onion, and the red pepper in here at the moment. I'm slicing these olives now, and I will put those in as well. Feta cheese, I will add to it. Now, the one thing about the feta cheese, and one thing I do, if you know you're going to eat all the salad right away, put everything in. I don't necessarily know that I'm going to eat it all tonight, so I don't necessarily want to put the feta cheese, all of it in. So what I would do is I would put it on the table and let us put it into our order as we eat it. And that way the salad will keep better if you're not eating it all right away. Okay, and then just add it in as you're going. All right. So that's most everything now. I have a lemon, squeeze that. Anybody else with questions?
Does anyone want to show us their work so far? The delicious things that you're making? Ooh, I see a really nice salad from Brazil.
No.
Eliab is very excited about this. Oh, Rebecca, good looking salad there. It's almost, I like that we're all going to be eating the same dinner together tonight. That's feels really fun. Like we're all together in the Beit Shafa. You can imagine it.
While all this was going on, my 1 stick of butter has melted and I just turned it off in the back. And it may be one of those things because butter as it sits, it's going to start to solidify and you need it to be liquid. You may need to put it back on partway through the phyllo dough process of layering the phyllo dough. It depends partially on how quickly you work as well. One thing I will tell you about phyllo dough, people say it can be tricky to work with, and to a degree it is, but it's a lot easier than most people like to think it is. So shouldn't be put off by it. The nice part is if it rips, you take the piece, you put it over, you lap it, put a little bit more butter, and nobody will see it. That's the nice part. So it works very easily that way. So I've got some lemon juice here. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. Actually, yep. All right, about equal parts. Salt. Some pepper. Some oregano, dried oregano.
Are you putting the spices into the salad or to the Spanikopita stuff?
This is for the salad. Okay.
That makes sense.
Sorry. If I wasn't clear, I apologize. Yeah, so this is just the salad dressing for this. And then momentarily, we'll go back to the Spanikopita. So mix it up and then basically just pour it over the whole thing. And then just put it aside. Oh, a little parsley too, so we'll do that as well.
Are you doing phyllo dough right now?
Hmm?
Are you doing the phyllo dough right now?
Not yet, not yet. No, I will definitely tell you. I'm still waiting for the, I got the wrong one. I got cilantro instead of parsley. I'm still waiting for the spinach to cool a little, so it'll be easier to handle.
Wait, so you're still doing the salad?
Excuse me?
Still doing the salad?
That's the salad.
So right now we're still doing the salad. This is what we have so far. Can you guys see? I hope. Okay. I've got a little bit of parsley here that I'm just going to wash quickly and then chop up and put into it as well. And once this is done, we'll set this aside, and hopefully the spinach is cool enough that we could slowly start to work on that. So one moment.
For the rest of us who don't necessarily chop as fast as Chef Tom, then I'm sure it'll give our spinach enough time to cool.
Yeah. There you go. And this is what happens when you've done this for a lifetime. It just becomes very second nature, and you're not even thinking about it. Let me just move that so you guys can actually see. So one of the things now, I don't know how much you can see, is how I hold my hand and my fingers while I'm chopping things. So one of the things I really try and work on is to keep my fingers out from underneath the knife. So my fingers are curled. Hopefully you can see. And that's how I hold everything while I'm chopping. And then the knife is actually, when I'm just doing the slicing, this is a little different already. When I'm doing the slicing, the knife is actually against the finger right there. And that's what actually controls how the knife goes from one slice to another. You just keep retreating back a little further and further. It's something that takes a while to develop, knife skills like that. Again, after a lifetime of doing it, becomes very second nature, as most things do for people who do it for long periods of time. All right, so at this point, we have the Greek salad, and we can just put this aside. As I said, I'm not adding the feta in now, but you can add the feta in as you eat. And that also means you can put in more or less depending on what you want. And you don't have to add any feta at all if you don't prefer not to, if you think there's plenty of cheese in the dinner already, which there is. All right, so let's move this cutting board. All right, gonna move the salad so we can start seeing things a little bit better. All right, I have a bowl here. And I have the pound of feta in here. I'm going to put that in the large bowl and break it up so that it's crumbled. Also add about half of this container of ricotta cheese. So it's about 8 ounces worth.
Can you show us what it looks like in your bowl?
Yep. So right now it's just crumbly. This one's a fairly soft feta, so some fetas are drier than others. So some crumble more easily. This is definitely a little creamier of a feta cheese, so it's not crumbling as well, but it's still broken up. And once I mix the spinach in, we'll break it up even more. All right, and then I'm going to add in, like I said, about half of this ricotta. It's always interesting writing cookbooks because when you're writing a cookbook, people want exact directions. And as a chef, there's a certain point where you stop looking at it and you're just doing it. So when I had to go back and try and figure out how to write an accurate recipe, that was a lot harder than I thought it would be. All right, so let's take a look at this spinach. I use the back of my hand to feel how warm or cool it is. It's still warm, it's not hot anymore. So I think we can try and do it. I'm going to give it one last, try and squeeze out some extra moisture here. Also with the feta cheese, when you do it, a lot of feta cheese is in water. So if that's the case with your feta cheese, try and let it drain a little bit before you put it in. Like I said, the drier the product you're putting into the phyllo dough, the better it will come out. All right. All right, so that's now going from colander into the bowl. And just to show you, about how much liquid came out, and that was just while some of it drained in the sink, but yeah, I got a good half a cup of liquid sitting right here, and I'm sure more of it came out in the sink before we even started. Let me just move some of these things out of the way. Now this is where it's nice to be in a professional kitchen. That's when you have somebody else cleaning up after you. But, all right, so now we're just going to mix this all up. So this is what I'm doing here. Just trying to mix the feta, ricotta, and spinach so it's fairly even. Honestly, the spinach probably could have been a little cooler when I started, but for the sake of expediency, I'm doing it like this. So as you can see, it's pretty cheesy. All right, so we're going to set this aside at the moment. Just clean up a moment. When you're working with phyllo, it's nice to have lots of space to be able to do it. It just makes your life a little easier. Oh, one thing I almost forgot, but did not. The dill. At this point is a good point to add in your dill. Okay, just make sure it gets well mixed again. Sorry. Okay. All right. Set that aside here.
I'm still decent. I don't know.
All right. All right, so phyllo dough. It is good to have a couple towels. You'll need a couple towels. You need a moment to grab that. That's good. Take it. And then, because what you want to do is you want to, phyllo dough, because it's so thin, will dry out fairly quickly. So you want to keep it covered with a towel while you're working with it. But like I said, even if it does start to get a little dry, you can still work with it. You have to be a little careful, but you get the hang of it after a while. So I'm gonna open up the package.
And was this phyllo dough frozen or refrigerated, or what's the best kind to get?
Almost all phyllo dough these days comes frozen. I don't actually think I've ever seen it fresh. This is a pretty standard brand. This is what they call Athens phyllo dough. Freezer sections. I often buy, you can often find whole wheat. In this case, I wasn't able to, so we have just the white. So you slide it out of the package and then just have to delicately unroll it here. And eventually it'll get to the point where you start to see that it is sheets.
And it should be completely defrosted in the package before doing this.
Defrosted in the package. So yeah, I bought this on, I guess I went shopping on Friday for this, and it's been sitting in my refrigerator since Friday. It should defrost overnight, but yeah. All right, so at this point, I cover it with another towel. So I have it's sandwiched between two towels. Just gonna give myself a little bit more space here. All right, and we have the pan. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to layer 8 sheets of phyllo dough, put it into the pan that you have here. Once that's done, we're going to put about half the spinach into that, cover it with another 8 sheets of phyllo dough, the other half of spinach, and then finally, last set of 8 phyllo doughs. Between each layer of phyllo dough, you want to have some, traditionally it's butter, but I have also in the past used a spray oil, which can work as well. Given that my computer's right there, I don't think I'm going to use the spray oil because I'd rather not get it all over the computer. Yeah, we'll proceed from there. So make sure your counter is nice and clean because you're going to be laying out the phyllo dough on your counter. So if you have a question about it, clean it first, please. And I should have started this whole cooking class with the one thing that we should all go wash our hands first. But given how everybody's been washing their hands constantly, I didn't think I'd have to say that. So the phyllo dough does stick some. Here, let me see if I can make it so you guys can see here. I'm trying to do this and show you guys at the same time. So you can see it sticks a little bit, but you can just gently peel it apart. And if it rips, like I said, it's not the end of the world because there's ways to patch that up. And I suspect you'll see that in this procedure here because invariably it will rip because they always do. All right, so I finally have a sheet. All right, so we have one sheet here. And I'm just gonna put this aside, put the one sheet there, cover it up again. So between each sheet you wanna cover. So it's a procedure and it's gonna take a little bit of time to do. All right. Yeah. Pastry brush. Put a little bit of butter on there and then just kind of gently just paint it on. If it doesn't get to every corner, that's fine. You're just trying to layer it. And that's how you get that nice flakiness from phyllo dough, is the layer of butter in between the dough. So, you know, if there's a little rip on one side, put it on the other. I've had batches of phyllo dough where the entire things were ripped and I just kind of keep playing and layering them until they get enough layers. So again, that's number 2. And yeah, it's a little bit of a pain to take the towel off every time, but you'll be glad you did it if towards the end when it starts to get dried. Because right now it's fine, but as you work with it, it gets drier and drier. So.
Can you put the camera down a little bit so we can see the table? We can't really see.
I'll try.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, that,
You don't need to see my face anyway. It's okay. So, all right. Is that better? Hopefully.
And we're just layering one on top of another?
One on top of another, and in between each layer, I'm just brushing it lightly with butter. Doesn't need to be a lot of butter, because believe me, by the end of it all, there's plenty of butter. So just a light layer. It won't be 100% covered. It doesn't need to be. You're just trying to get that in between. So this is number, I think 4 now, maybe 5. That also happens. You start to lose track, especially when you're trying to talk with other people. So I'm going to say this is number 4. And worst comes to worst, there's an extra layer. Never hurts. Okay. Right, another layer. Come on. Go.
Today we used fresh spinach too, but if you were using frozen, how much would you recommend for the
About
two?
the same, it's 2 pounds, same amount volume wise. It's already broken down some. I just defrost it beforehand, or even defrost it that, that day. It's, you can use it frozen and just.
So 2 pounds frozen.
Yeah, so here we have a little bit of a rip already. Usually the packages, I think, are 10-ounce packages. So if that's the case, 3 packages. If it's a little less than 2 pounds, it'll be fine. Okay, so that had a little rip, but I just kind of laid it on top, tapped it on. You wouldn't know it, except that I told you. So, especially once it gets all layered in, there's no way to tell. You're just looking for that extra. Right. And this one's ripping a little as well. Again, not a big deal. Usually what I'll do is if there's a rip on one edge, I'll try and put if there's another one ripped, I'll put it on the other side so they're not all, one tear is not on top of the other tear, and that way you won't pick it up and go, oops, as it falls apart. Okay, this is going to be my final layer for this. Perfectly honestly, I've kind of lost track, but I think it's about the age. All right, and one thing I'm going to do before I put it into my pan, so just really lightly just butter the bottom of the pan. Again, doesn't have to be very heavy. Just this way, it'll keep it from sticking. So I just do the bottom and the sides really quickly. All right, so now we have the pan here. Oh, make sure we cover that back up while we're doing this. We should have the layers of phyllo dough. And just going to lay it right in the pan. And depending on the size of your pan, it's going to come up somewhat. This is how this one looks. Don't know how well you can see it, but hopefully you can. All right, and now we're going to put in about half the spinach mixture. I'm going to leave a little bit out because I want to show you guys one other thing. So. Okay. So I just try and smooth.
How are you spreading that out there? Are you?
I have a wooden spoon. I'm just kind of spreading it out, trying to even it out so it's a nice even layer. And at this point, it should be about half the pan should be filled. So here, I'll show you in just a moment. One thing, get in the corners. Corners often somehow get neglected, things with lasagnas and these kinds of things. And the poor person who gets the corner piece doesn't get it all. So that's what it looks like at this point. Hopefully you guys can see it, okay? And now we'll do layer number 2, the middle layer. So you can see it's a little ripped. I'm not going to really worry about it. It does that. There's no avoiding it.
Is this going to be another 8 layers of phyllo dough?
Yep, another 8 layers of the phyllo dough, precisely. And then the last one will be also another 8. And then at the very end, when we put that last 8-ply phyllo on top, we're going to score it. Just cut it into portions, because if you try cutting it after the fact, once it's all flaky and dry, it doesn't cut very well. But if you do it beforehand, it comes out very nicely. So that's number 2.
Yeah, we got some questions about the number of layers, but
Yeah, go ahead.
we'll reiterate that, you know what? If it's not exactly 8, that's fine.
Yeah, with cooking especially, not so much with baking, but with cooking, it's very flexible. It's really to taste what you guys like. And there's no such hard and fast rules, really. If you like it at the end of it all, then you've succeeded. That's really all it counts. If it's palatable, enjoyable, you've scored. Now, this is, of course, can be a lot of fun when you're making this type of thing for 300 people, as you can imagine. Just stand there, you have an entire counter, and all you're doing is layering phyllo dough. And everybody's doing it. 10 people doing this.
So we'll let you know how ours goes, but we're doing a experimenting with the gluten-free phyllo dough. And it certainly doesn't look as thin and lovely as yours.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how you make a gluten-free, because the whole reason phyllo dough is what it is, the way you can get it as thin as it is. I mean, now it's with a machine, so that's one thing. But it used to be you would just take this lump of dough and you'd have a bunch of people pulling on it. Now, what you're pulling is the gluten. That's what's keeping the structure. That's what's allowing it to be to hold. So clearly, when you're doing a gluten-free thing, that's not going to work. So that's a tricky one. I'd be very curious to find out how it comes out and how well it works. I have not worked with a gluten-free phyllo dough before. It's amazing what you can get though these days, and it's wonderful.
What about preheated in the oven?
To what? Preheat what in the oven? Oh, yes. No, we will preheat. Yeah, no, before you actually bake it, we will preheat it. It's early now, so I'm not doing it because I don't know about you guys, but I'm not planning on having dinner just yet. But yes, if you are planning on putting this right in the oven, I'd say go ahead, turn the oven on. I believe I've said 375, and you can get it preheated, because at this point you'll be done shortly as well. So yeah, you can set that up. Now, if you end up having any phyllo dough left over from this, you roll it up back in the box or whatever, throw it in your freezer, unless you're planning on working with it right away, in which case keep it out. But if you have no plans for it immediately, roll it up, put it back in the freezer. It will refreeze just fine. And then just give it a day or so to defrost again when you're ready to use it. So it looks like the amount of butter that I made, the 1 stick, will be perfect. In fact, there will probably be some left over, which is fine. So we've got another 8 layers here, I think. And we're just going to put that in the pan again. So again, now it's just covering it up. All right. So we're doing that. And another layer. Spinach.
Is that all of the spinach cheese mixture?
Well, it should be. I'm leaving something aside because I'm going to show you guys how to do the little triangles as well. So I should put it all in, but in this case, I'm not very intentionally. This way, there's a little bit left, so I can show you another technique for making the Spanikopita instead of this. This is a nice, easy way because it's definitely quicker than doing the little triangles. The little triangles are very nice as well. So that's why I'm leaving some aside so I can do that and show you that technique as well. All right.
And the filling is on the top.
Yep. So now this is the second layer. So now you've had 1 layer of phyllo dough, a layer of spinach, another layer of phyllo, and now we're going to have a final layer of phyllo dough on the very top.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not doing the phyllo. We just did the filling, but I wanna.
Oh, yeah. And I've done that too. In fact, that's what I used to do at camp when I didn't have gluten-free. I would just do the filling and kind of bake it off that way and go, sorry guys, don't know how else to do it. But I don't actually, when I did it, because it's been a few years since I've done it, I don't even think there was gluten-free phyllo dough available. I mean, we've been at the camp now for 10 years, so availability of gluten-free products has gotten much more readily available and people have created all sorts of things to be able to use as substitutions, which is wonderful if you're gluten-free and you need to do that. Two. Three. Okay, so 4. Okay, 5. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question about the spinach juice that was left after
Yep.
you strain. We have a whole lot of it, and I'm wondering, would you use it as a base for soup, or what would you recommend?
Yeah, you could. I mean, it would just have the taste of, mild taste of the spinach and garlic. You could absolutely use it for soup, no question about it. It all depends on how many things you want to store in your refrigerator or freezer. I mean, if you're planning on making one, I mean, that's what happens to me is I go, oh, this is a great idea, and I'll do that. And then it kind of gets lost, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what's this? So yes, you can absolutely use it. You just have to remember to do it. I've been making yogurt on a regular basis for myself at home, and when I do that, I always pour off some of the whey from it. And there's a couple different things you can do with whey, and one of them is you can feed it to your fruit trees, and I have a few fruit trees, so I've been doing that. But it's really good to save for like a soup because it gives you added protein and it's great.
We actually when we post our cheese making video in a couple of days, we're going to talk about a couple different uses for whey, and it's good for crafting projects too. You can use it to help as a mordant to help fix dye. Apparently our chickens like it a lot also. We feed some to the chickens, and some people use it for conditioner for their hair.
And then you can do lots of bad whey jokes.
I have a question. You were talking about making the triangle phyllos.
Yes.
Is that what this extra is for, or are we putting it on the top
You
of the
can put it all in right away. I mean, you can put in all the spinach. I left a little aside just to be able to show you guys and demonstrate how to do it. But this is designed
The triangle, not to put it on top of the phyllo.
No. You want the last layer will be all phyllo dough. You don't want.
And then if you have extras over the edges of your pot pan,
I'll show you in just a moment exactly how I do that one too. So this is the last layer. Just going to put one more layer on, and then I will show you exactly how I finish the. Okay, let's cover this in the meantime. Okay. Really, it's just a matter of folding it all in, which means the sides always have the extra phyllo dough, which can be kind of nice. All right, so we've got the last 8 layers. Putting it in the pan. I'm tucking it in the corners. And now is when I'll just kind of tuck it in a little bit more. And what I will do at that point is I will also add a little bit more butter on the top for those layers that I just folded over. So you kind of see at this point, it's kind of tucked in. I just folded the edges, so it's almost like there's a little extra crust on there. Just taking a little bit of butter and just running it across the edges there. All right, and we'll get back to that in a minute. I'm just going to show you the triangles here now really quickly. So what I will do for this one, just 2 layers. because I'll show you what happens then. One layer here.
These are probably really fun as like an appetizer.
Yeah, they're great appetizers, but you can also, I mean, it depends on how large you make them. They can be entree size too. So these are going to be a little on a little bit larger side. So that's one layer.
And what temperature, Tom, should we preheat the oven to?
375.
Thank you.
All right, so there's the other layer. Now at this point, you've got 2 layers on. What I'm going to do is I'm only buttering half of it, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this over like this. So now we suddenly have 4 layers. I'm going to change the direction of the phyllo dough so it's facing away from me. Put a little bit more butter on the inside there. And then we take a dollop of the spinach cheese mixture and put it on one side there. And then basically, I don't know if anybody ever shows how to fold a flag anymore, but so at this point, I just folded over one triangle, and I'm going to fold it over that way, this way, and that. So you wind up with a little triangle like this. And then this you can just bake on a sheet pan. And to finish it, just put a little bit of butter on top as well. All right. And yeah, so scoring.
How long is the phyllo in is the spanakopita in the pan going to bake, and how long is the triangle going to bake?
The ones in the pans bakes for about a half an hour. The triangles, probably about closer to 15, 20 minutes. They're thinner and they won't need it. Keep an eye on it. Basically, the phyllo dough should be golden brown. The nice thing is the filling is entirely cooked, so there's no way you're getting anything raw. So that's really not a concern if that is, for anybody. So that's not an issue. So scoring it. You can score it pretty much however you want to. I think I'm just going to do this and just really gently take the knife and kind of cut through the top layers. You may not cut all the way through. You might cut all the way through. It's fine either way. I'm just going to cut this into 8 pieces. So half, what looks like a portion size, essentially. All right, so I don't know if you can see the cuts, but that's what I've done. So there's 8 pieces there. They're all laid out. There's butter on the top. And basically at this point, it's ready to go into the oven anytime, bake for about a half hour, and dinner. You've got a Greek salad to go with it, so you should be all set, folks. So that's it for this one. Any questions before I sign off? No? Yes? Maybe?
I am gonna unmute everyone for just a moment so we can give a big thank you to Chef Tom for revealing the secrets behind Spanikopita, one of our favorite camp dishes, and for teaching us how to make a delicious dinner that we will enjoy tonight. So here we go. I'm gonna unmute everyone. Get ready to say thank you. 3, 2, 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're all very
Thank
welcome.
you.
I hope it comes out great, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Let me know.
Oops, I muted Chef Tom. Sorry about that. But thank you all for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Hope that you enjoy your Spanikopita and Greek salad. You can send us a photo. You can post on Facebook and Instagram and tag Home Eden Village Home instead. And we will see you tomorrow for more DIY videos and our first radio show live at 4 p.m. Thanks for being with us and have a great evening, everybody. Bye-bye.